Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be discussing more Deebo drama, or was it really drama? Javon Hargrave's restructure, what it means for the team in 2025 and beyond. We're going to be talking about injuries, players coming back, and previewing the 49ers-Rams Thursday night on Amazon Prime. We're going to be going over players, stats, rankings, thoughts on the game, and giving a prediction. So let's dive right in. I think this is going to be an abbreviated podcast for today, not as long as the normal podcasts, so you don't have to hear my monotone voice for any longer than you absolutely need to. But let's start with Deebo Samuel, who was responding on social media to fans, which is never, ever a good thing. In fact, before we get into Deebo, Charvarius Ward, cornerback who is dealing with the tragic loss of his 1-year-old daughter, first two games back, past couple of weeks, deactivated his Twitter account because jerk-off fans were giving him shit about his play. I didn't see really all or any of the tweets or posts, since it's X, that was directed at him. If anyone was saying anything about his daughter, God, I hope not. Or if it was just about his play, which is still, there needs to be one, you just can't be an asshole, right? As fans, I mean, I know I'm talking to the wall or the ether, and I know no one out there that's listening would do anything like this, but you can't jump on a player who's coming off of a tragedy, right? I mean, the fact that people feel brave enough, keyboard warriors or smartphone thumb warriors that feel comfortable enough to go out there and, post something on someone's, X page or Instagram, or send someone a direct message. One, do you think they're going to read it? One, two, do you think it really matters? And three, why the hell are you doing that? I mean, social media is there's some good that comes out of it. I can't really think of any off the top of my head right now, or maybe sharing, pictures with family members that don't live close to you. Although you can do that via text message now on your phone. You don't have to put that on social media for the whole world to see what your child's doing or what you're eating or what event you did or what kind of bowel movement you have, all that stupid nonsense. But just because people have a voice doesn't mean they have a say. And even though if you do have a voice, don't make your voice out to be one of an asshole. And Charvarius Ward had to experience that, like others have, taking themselves off of social media for not wanting to deal with the horse shit. And that's just a shame. I mean, like anything, it just takes one bad apple to ruin it for the vast majority of people, right? Whether it's, say, you're in a classroom and one kid acts up and everybody gets punished. Someone does something in a sports practice, acts like a goof. Everybody has to run laps. This is more than one bad apple that we're coming, at least based on what I understand, that was coming after Charvarius Ward. And it's a shame. One, you shouldn't do that at all. And two, what kind of an asshole do you look like doing that after a win? After a dominant win? What, Charvarius Ward gave up a touchdown in garbage time to make the victory only 25 points? I mean, what kind of an asshole do you have to be? Again, to do it in general. Just to do it in general. But you're a super asshole to do it after a dominant win. And I don't mean to chuckle because I'm not making light of the situation with Ward or his daughter or anything like that. But people's stupidity never fails to amaze me. And Deebo gets caught up in it. Like a lot of people on social, athletes and some famous people do, responding to people that you're never, it's like having an argument with a child. You're not going to win. You could punish that child, but the child's just going to keep coming back at you saying nonsensical stuff. If you're someone famous, you are not going to beat these morons. They're just going to keep coming at you. The best thing you can do is either ignore it, mute any responses, or just not be on it at all, or have a burner account. If you want to go on social media and check out what's being said, then do something incognito or not associated with you. Maybe have your social media team deal with maybe your official page or account or whatnot. But Deebo, Deebo's been struggling, right? Deebo has been struggling. His last 4 games, 11 receptions for 85 yards, and he has not gone over 22 receiving yards in any of his last 4 games. Which again feels like it's inexcusable with Brandon Ayuk out and McCaffrey, McCaffrey was out this past game, but has played the past couple of games, but missing your de facto number one receiver in Ayuk, you would expect your number two to step up. Instead, the number three has stepped up in Jauan Jennings, who's a bigger receiver than Samuel. I guess a better route runner, but that's not saying a whole lot since Deebo Samuel's not a great route runner. I don't know if he would readily admit this, but certainly not at the level of Brandon Ayuk, probably not even at the level of a Ricky Pearsall in Ricky Pearsall's first year. He's faster than Jennings. I would like to believe that, if they lined up to race, 50 yards 10 times, Deebo would win 10 times. So you'd have to imagine that Deebo should be quicker out of his breaks. But Jauan Jennings has assumed now the mantle of the number one wide receiver. The number one receiving threat is still Kittle. The number one wide receiver on the team right now is Jauan Jennings. And I'm so happy to be wrong about him. I thought that, his ceiling was a low end number two and that he would thrive as a big slot, but he is exceeding my expectations as a boundary wide receiver. And he doesn't line up exclusively, by the sidelines. Shanahan does move around as he moved Brandon, as he does move Deebo. Ricky moves around McCaffrey when he's playing, flexed out at, as a slot or whatnot. But I'm glad that Jauan Jennings has stepped up and taken that role. It's not like Brock was force feeding Jennings because he didn't trust Deebo or Deebo wasn't getting open, didn't trust Pearsall, didn't trust Conley. Kittle might have been covered. Jennings has earned the reception he's gotten by getting open, fighting for contested balls, and showing that he's still third in Jauan. But now he's also first and second in Jauan as well. But Deebo's quote, and I sped right past that, was, quote, not struggling at all, just not getting the ball. And then I don't know if he had a follow-up post on X or it was something in the locker room where it wasn't directed at teammates. He's right. He's not getting targeted a lot, but why is that? Is he not getting open? Is Kyle not dialing up as many horizontal passes for him, screens or whatnot? He's getting the ball on the ground. Last game he had 5 handoffs, but that's not working anymore, Kyle. And I know, Kyle, you're not watching, but I'll just keep saying Kyle. Kyle, it's not working anymore. I think teams are smart enough that when Deebo's in the backfield, he is not a decoy. Chances are he's getting the ball and he is not running it nearly as effectively as Mason, McCaffrey, or even Guerendo last game. If you want to put Deebo in the backfield, you have to do it with someone like, oh Christ, this week, if it's going to be Patrick Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn, like there has to be some doubt whether Deebo's getting the ball or not. And I think there might have been one play where there was a dual running back lineup. And I think it might have been a fake to Guerendo, handoff to Deebo, went for like 4 or 5 yards. Not saying that you have to do that exclusively, but the Deebo deception is not there. And I think teams are keying in on him, even on reverses, jet sweeps. Couple plays I saw clips of, he wasn't necessarily following his blockers, not getting upfield as quickly as he should, a little bit too much dancing horizontally. But without Ayuk and McCaffrey, they need him. And you saw, and if you didn't hear, John came out and said it, Kyle came out and said it. They need Deebo for the stretch run. If they're going to have any prayer of making the playoffs or winning the division, it starts with beating the Rams, and it starts with getting as many of your playmakers involved as possible. And Deebo can't go for 22 or fewer yards in the passing game this week or moving forward at all. It's got to be you got to be at least double that. And I know that's setting the bar low, at least 45 yards, maybe at least 50, 55. He's got to be targeted, say 6 or 7 times. But the last 4 games has not looked good. And Deebo's allowed to voice his concern. I mean, A.J. Brown, is it okay for A.J. Brown to do it because the Eagles have been winning a lot of games when he said the issue was with the passing game? So that's kind of taking a shot at Sirianni, definitely taking a shot at Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's bitching and they're winning. Yes, Deebo, yes, the Niners beat the Bears, but they lost their previous 3 games before that. And there wasn't really, I don't think, a ton of complaining coming out of Deebo. I mean, I don't listen to his podcast. I don't think Deebo's some, great or compelling interview. He's a man of few words. So I really don't listen to anybody's podcast. I just don't have time, but I'm certainly not going to listen to Deebo's. And I love Deebo, but he's not a talkative guy. I'll listen to Kittle. There's some, I listen to Warner. There's some players on the team I listen to. Deebo just doesn't talk enough or expound enough to really hold my interest if I'm going to listen to a podcast, which I don't anyway. So let's go from offense to defense. Javon Hargrave this week, the Niners essentially cut his salary. They cut his base salary from about $21 million to $2.1 million. They saved $18 million on the cap. It was essentially a base, not essentially, it was literally a base salary pay cut. If the Niners release him post June 1st of 2025, after this season, they could save $3 million on the cap. But in doing that, it would leave, if I'm understanding this correctly, and I had to read a couple different articles and watch a couple different videos, and it was still nebulous to me, and I'm not a rocket scientist, but I don't think I'm a dummy either. If they cut Hargrave, it saves $3 million on the cap, but it would leave a $30 million cap hit in 2026. If Hargrave actually plays for the Niners in 2025, he would cost $10 million on the cap, which isn't terrible for a D tackle. I mean, I wouldn't say he's an ascending player. He's 32 years old. He's on the back nine of his career. But if he plays in 2025, the Niners can then release him in 2026 and spread that $30 million cap hit between 2026 and 2027, essentially being $15 million dead cap hit a year. It's a matter of, how do you want to take your medicine? Do you want to take 2 teaspoons of something that tastes gross in 2026? Or do you want 1 teaspoon of something that tastes gross in 2026 and 2027? The same thing applies to Deebo. Now, he restructured his contract before the season. He could be cut or traded post June 1st of 2025 and save $5 million on the salary cap. Not a ton of money. The issue with Deebo is then he still has actually, either way, a $33 million void year cap hit in 2026. He's not on the team in 2026 as of right now, and I highly doubt he's going to be extended. So it seems like, unless he gets traded and maybe that cap hit gets lowered or goes away, if he gets traded and another team gives him a new contract. I don't know the particulars of that, and I was trying to do the research and I couldn't find it. I apologize if I didn't do enough research to understand this for you guys. But as of right now, even if he plays out his contract in 2025 and hits free agency in 2026, he counts for $33 million on the 2026 cap, and he's not on the team. So to me, that means you can't trade or release both players in 2025, since it would crush you in 2026. Deebo's $33 million void year cap hit, and Hargrave's essentially $30 million cap hit. Again, we're talking 2026. $63 million in dead money for 2 players who are not on your team. Curious to see how this plays out. I've said, if you guys have been listening in previous podcasts, and I greatly appreciate it if it's your first time listening, welcome. Hopefully you stick around a bit. I wasn't sure if Deebo's restructure made him more appealing for a trade in the offseason or more appealing for the Niners just to release post June 1st. They cannot release him before June 1st. The cap hit would be catastrophic for 2025. So Hargrave, I don't know. This may make Javon be more likely to be on the team in 2025. Regardless, the D line needs fresh bodies. I think Evan Anderson is a keeper as a rotational player. You still have Malik Collins, who I believe is under contract for 2025, and you have Jordan Elliott, who is under contract for 2025. Doesn't mean either one of those players couldn't be released if someone better were to come along, and there would be some cap savings, but not a ton. But I imagine them addressing this position in the draft and or free agency. They have to roll into the 2025 season, the 53-man active roster with 5 D tackles and 5 DNs. They went with 4 of each to start the season, and I thought that was way too light. Way too light. And yes, you can they've elevated Evan Anderson a couple times before fully activating him or fully elevating him to the 53-man roster. But I think they need that fifth body that they can rotate in and rotate activations from game to game. Now, Hargrave might be gone and they might be bringing in 2 new D tackles. I don't know. Or it's a new D coordinator, which helps tighten up the run defense in a new scheme. Possibility. I think there's a lot of us out there, myself included, that would like Nick Sorensen gone. So Hargrave and Deebo right now are 50-50 bets to me that they make the roster, that they are on the roster in 2025. But I think if you release a player, it can only be one. And right now I don't, or trade. I don't know which player that would be. If I had to guess or pick one, I think it would be Deebo, because I think, or hope, fingers crossed, that a trade somehow helps to lessen his void year cap it in 2026. But again, I don't know that for certain, but I can't imagine both being gone for what that means for 2026. Now let's look at some injured players. You guys saw backup left guard Ben Barch was taken away on a high ankle sprain. He is going to be placed on IR. He's done for the year, which means Aaron Banks is back at left guard. So Spencer Burford, who acquitted himself well against the Bears, he's back to the bench in terms of a backup, I guess, basically at left guard, and right tackle. We are not sure as of this recording on Wednesday if Bosa, Williams, or Dre Greenlaw will play. They are all questionable. Isaac Rendo at running back, Kyle said he's going to be a game time decision. So we're not going to know until Thursday, maybe by 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then if he doesn't play, then your running back room is Patrick Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn, and I'm sure Israel Abanikanda would be activated to give them 3 running backs on the 53, on the game day roster, excuse me. And it's still curious how they didn't tap Matt Breida to come back when they brought Abanikanda in and Vaughn to the practice squad. At least it's somebody, 30 years old, still has speed, familiar with Kyle's system. You think that would be someone that in a pinch, you could have brought him in. And I guess if anything were to happen, say to Patrick Taylor or Keyshawn Vaughn or Israel Abanikanda in practice today, again, knock on wood, hopefully not, but I think it's a walkthrough that they could just call Breida up, fly him in, and suit him up for the game on Thursday night. So let's preview that. The Niners-Rams, Thursday, 8:15 Eastern Standard Time on Amazon Prime. Last I saw, the Niners are a 2-point favorite, which means this is essentially a pick 'em if this was a neutral site game. The NFC West, as you guys know, the crummy Seattle Seahawks leading the way at 8-5. The Rams are 7-6. Arizona and the Niners bringing up the rear at 6-7. These two teams faced each other in week 3, a 27-24 loss that the Niners experienced. This was a team that did not have their 2 starting wide receivers in Los Angeles. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were hurt. Tutu Atwell had a good game. Kyren Williams, a good game, 24 for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jake Moody missed a 55-yard field goal that could have had the Niners up 10. Are we really going to get on Moody for missing a 55-yarder? You can, but again, it's a 55-yarder, guys. And then, of course, the next drive, Ronnie Bell drops a bomb from Brock Purdy, which would have had the Niners inside the 20 to set up a game-winning field goal with basically less than a minute to go. And the Niners would have taken a minute 45 to go, and the Niners would have taken that clock down, not giving the Rams a chance to kick their own game-winning field goal. Matt Stafford, efficient, 221 through the air and 1 touchdown. As a team, they ran 26 times for 98 yards and 2 scores. Like I said, the bulk of that was from Kyren Williams. Brock Purdy, without Deebo and Ayuk rounding into form, no McCaffrey, people wanted to see, could he excel without 2 of his weapons? And he did. 292 and 3 touchdowns to Juwan Jennings. The team ran the ball 34 times for 137 yards, no touchdowns. 41 yards of those were from Brock on 10 carries. So the Niners had a golden opportunity there just like against the Cardinals, just like against the Rams the Seahawks a month ago, where they could have gotten a win, 2 or 3 in the NFC West and completely changed their fortunes this year. Instead, they are a game back of the Rams and 2 games back of Seattle, and they are in, as the team has put it, desperation mode, must-win territory. And Brock and Deebo wound up addressing the team before the Bears game the night before on Saturday, and it was apparently a really, emotional speeches that they both gave. I'm not sure if anybody was crying. I highly doubt that, but got the team in the mindset like it's now or never. And it's great that they gave that speech. I would say, why the hell didn't you guys give that speech before the Seahawks game? That might have maybe turned the tide and got a much needed NFC and NFC West win. I don't think a speech against the Packers or the Bills would have mattered the way those games went, especially the Packers with Brock being out. Maybe they were the beneficiary of giving a speech and playing the Bears. It was the perfect storm of speech and shit team that resulted in a 25-point win. But not to say that players don't, the way the season was going prior to the Bears game, prior to even the Packers or Seahawks game, when they started dropping those first 2 NFC West games, there should have been a feeling of desperation, right? You could feel it as a fan. I'm sure players feel it. I'm sure coaches feel it, or just staff members, employees in the building feel like the season is slipping away and it's time to get a little bit desperate. And Kittle in his interview was saying, like, I don't want to come out and say guys weren't playing hard or playing their hardest or taking plays off. But the message really was, you got to go all out every play, all the time. And Yetur Gross-Matos, who had 3 sacks against the Bears, Floyd had 2, and I think Malik Collins with 1. Yetur Gross-Matos, one of the clips I saw, was coming off the field toward the end of the game saying, playoff win number 1. This team knows now every game is a playoff game. If they want to make the tournament, they basically have to win every game. Although there's a path for them to get there if they drop one, basically to the Lions or Dolphins, preferably, because that's an AFC team. But they can get there at 9-8. What they can't do is get there at all if they lose to the Rams. That obviously takes the NFC West completely off the table. It's an NFC loss, and it makes things much more difficult. They would need the Commanders to completely shoot themselves to get the number 7 seed. Forget the Packers or the Vikings. They both beat San Francisco. They have the head-to-head. There's no way that's going to happen. So they need the Commanders to completely shit all over themselves the last 4 games, and we don't really envision that happening. Like I mentioned last podcast, the Seahawks are at home for Green Bay on Sunday night, at home for the Vikings. And then they're at the Rams and at another game. I apologize that I'm blanking on, but they're 4 losable games. Even if they go 1-3 and the Niners go 3-3, I'm not sure how the tiebreaker thing looks, but there is a path for the Niners to get there at 9-8. The Seahawks would have to drop at least 3 games. So any Sunday night, nationally televised, obviously we're all rooting for the Packers, and that feels kind of gross. Maybe not as gross as rooting for the Seahawks or the Cowboys, let's say. But there is a path for the Niners, but it is obviously a super steep uphill climb. Starts with a Rams team that beat the Bills last week, and it's a week-to-week league, right? The Bills look like world beaters against the Niners in the snow. Then you figure that they're going to not walk all over the Rams, but beat the Rams, but, traveling cross country. The Bills defense did not look all that formidable. Neither did the Rams defense, because the Bills put up, high 30s, right? Stafford, multiple touchdown game. I think he's had 10 touchdowns and no interceptions his last 3 or 4 games. Stafford is playing out of his mind right now with all his weapons. Who'd have thought a quarterback with all his weapons plays better or a lot better when he doesn't have his weapons? People that keep wanting to see Brock without weapons, and who's acquitted himself pretty well when he hasn't had them, but much better when he has. What an amazing discovery that quarterbacks play better when they have their talented weapons around them. Unbelievable. Stafford so far, 3,300 yards, essentially what Brock would have if Brock didn't miss one game when he missed the Packer game. 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's right around where Brock is. More touchdowns and 1 less interception from a TD interception ratio. Kyren Williams already over 1,000 yards. On the ground, 12 rushing touchdowns. Puka Nacua, 708 through the year and 3 scores. Cooper Kupp, 657 and 6 scores. The Rams defense, sack-wise, led by their D-line. Braden Fisk, rookie D tackle out of Florida State with 6. Jared Verse, rookie D end out of Florida State, 4.5. Then you have Byron Young at linebacker with 6 sacks, and Kobe Durner, defensive tackle with 5. Very young D-line between Fisk, Turner, and Jared Verse. They're either first or second year players. It's going to be an ascending defense. They just haven't played like it so far. We're going to go over the rankings in a minute. So 28 total sacks. They're your 4 players that are leading the charge. Interceptions, I believe they have 11. Safety Jalen McCullough with 4, and rookie safety Cameron Kinchins with 6. The corners could be had. The safety is a little bit more opportunistic. Now, the injuries, the Rams are healthier this game than they were the first game they played the Niners, and that's scary since they beat the Niners 27-24. Missing a lot of players both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. But this game, wide receivers Demarcus Robinson and Jordan Whittington are questionable. Robinson's got a shoulder injury that he may play through. Jordan Whittington, I think it's a knee. And starting corner Kobe Durant, questionable as well. Now, as you might suspect, the Rams better on offense than defense this year. Offense overall, they're 15th. They're 9th. Passing 238 a game. They're 25th rushing, averaging 103. 16 in points scored, averaging 23 games. So a middling offense when it's all said and done, right? 15th overall. Defensively, they could be had 27th overall, 24th against the pass, allowing 225 a game, 28th against the run, allowing 141, 24th in points scored, allowing 25.5. So they're scoring 23 a game, allowing 25.5, and they are 7-6 on the positive side of 500. Turnovers, Rams are +3, Niners are -3. That's a 6 turnover differential. So, thoughts on the game, right? Looking at those rankings, do I think the Niners could hold the Rams under or around their season average of 103 rushing yards? I do. They played well against the Bears running game last week. The Bears did not do themselves any favors getting away from the run in the first half. The majority of their 68 under 70 yards came in the second half, mainly the third quarter when they committed to the run, although the game was 24-0 at that point. Kyren Williams, I snuck into the playoffs in one of my fantasy leagues. I have Kyren Williams going, so I hope he has if you can give me 100 yards and a touchdown, 90, let's say under 190 yards and a touchdown, and maybe a couple receptions for 30 yards in a Rams loss, I'll take it. I need it, actually. I need it, and I'll take it. But I think the Niners can hold the Rams because they don't really go much deeper beyond Kyren Williams. I mean, Blake Corum, I'm sure, will get a few carries. I don't think he's going to do a ton. And Matthew Stafford is, 36 years old. He's not going to really pick up much with his legs. So all the rushing yards are going to come from Kyren Williams. If the Niners can control him, very good chance of winning. If the Niners can, this might need to be a bombs away Brock type of air assault game, since we don't know what the running game is going to look like. And let's get into my thoughts on the game. What is this going to look like possibly without Guerendo? Now, he has a foot sprain, came out of the game against the Bears. That's always, or a lot, or most of the time, that's worse than an injury or a soreness that develops after the game, because it obviously prevented him from continuing to play. And on a short week, you have to game plan and think he's not going to be available. That's the assumption for me Wednesday as I'm recording this, because I just haven't heard otherwise. And Shanahan said he's going to be a game time decision. So those are always very, very iffy. So it becomes the Patrick Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn, Deebo Samuel, and Israel Abanikanda show. What does that look like? Because Patrick Taylor is he's a mild thumper, not a speed back. You're going to see him when he gets the ball, he's going to carry it like this, 2 hands, so it's not going to be this running and stiff arming. If he's someone that if he gets 15 carries, it's probably going to be 15 for 55 yards. I can't imagine him having a big game. Keyshawn Vaughn, journeyman type back. A little bit smaller, but powerfully built. You know, I could see them maybe splitting carries or, of maybe 10, 12 each, or if Taylor gets 15, maybe Vaughn gets 7. Deebo's going to get his 3 to 5 because Kyle's still has a man crush on Deebo running the ball, though it's been wildly ineffective. And I don't think Abanaconda is going to be, if Guerendo doesn't play, I think he has to be active just based on the fact that if Taylor or Vaughn gets injured, you can't just have one running back on your roster plus Deebo as his backup. You can't do that. You need to have 3 running backs active. Even if Abanaconda doesn't get any carries, it's just the backup. What if injury strikes type of scenario. I still think the formula of less than 30 passes, more than 30 runs plays out, because even if it's 30 rushes for around 100 yards, you need to commit to the run to make play action a thing, to make play action a threat. So while yardage output obviously matters, because then you get into, second or third and manageable, first downs, keeping your offense on the field, keeping time of possession hopefully to your advantage, volume still matters. You always want 35 for 150, but if you get 35 for 110, that's still okay because you're getting 35, right? Kyle, this game should be stubborn about running the ball. I mean, he could be stubborn about anything he wants to do against a Rams team that's 24th against the pass and 28th against the run, right? If the Niners can get close to what the Rams are giving up, 141, which would be slightly above the Niners game average, that will be great. And I think Brock has a really good chance for throwing over 225, what the Rams are giving up. I think the Niners, I'm not going to say can move the ball with ease, but I think if Brock, and here's thought number 2, can he duplicate what he did in game 1? So now 292 and 3 touchdowns, it's not out of the realm of possibility, right? But if he can give you 270 and 2 touchdowns, and maybe they get a touchdown on the ground, a couple field goals from Moody, I think they're in a very good position to win the game. And I think Brock, I think the shoulder is fine. I think the elbow is, the shoulder is as close to fine, I think, as you could probably hope at this point, coming off of his shoulder injury, missing a game, playing a game in the snow where he really didn't take any big hits on it, and then had that scary personal foul being bent backwards against the Bears, but it wasn't a shoulder thing where he had to come out. He was shaken up and came out for one play. So I think, guys, we're beyond the shoulder stuff. People were complaining. If you remember that pass play that Brock had against the Bears where he rolled left and threw back across his body to Jennings, and Jennings had to slow down for it, caught it, 30-plus yard gain. And people are complaining, well, I think Brock's shoulder is still not good and they should stick to short passes. No, dude, Brock just doesn't have a cannon for an arm. The ball got there. 35-plus yard gain, and you're complaining about the pass? Again, terrible fans. Everyone's always reaching. They're reaching so much for something to complain about. It might as well be a reach around. Defensively, can the defense play close to the Bears game? The Bears are trash. Yes, they had a better second half than first half. Kyron Williams is a better running back than DeAndre Swift. Matthew Stafford is a much better running back than Caleb Williams. And Nakua and Cooper Kupp are much better receivers than who the Bears have trotted out there, whether it was Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, or DJ Moore. That's a nice three-headed monster at receiver, but Kupp and Nakua are just a level above any two that you put out there. And if you want to include a third, I mean, you could say that maybe at 3 receivers and Cole Kmet for the Bears, that's better than the 3 receivers and the tight end the Rams are going to put on the field. But Sean McVay is a much better offensive coordinator than, who is it, Thomas Brown? That was the OC, now interim head coach for the Bears and the OC. But if the defense can give you 80%, 75 to 80% of what they did against the Bears, or showed against the Bears, bottling up the ground game, completely bottling up the ground game. I mean, the Niners, I don't know if you would believe this, but they're the number 3 overall defense in the NFL based on yards and the number 3 overall rush defense. Who would have, or number 3 pass defense. I'm sorry. The run defense is a little bit much lower on the list. I think they're in the teens. based on the way that the season has gone, based on the way that the season is felt, based on what we've seen with our own eyes on defense with Sorensen calling the plays. I didn't assume that any aspect of the Niners defense would be top 5 overall, top 5 against the pass, but here we are. What does that mean going into each game every week? Not much, because it's a week-to-week league and it's matchups, right? The matchup against the Rams is much different than the matchup against the Bears. But again, if the Niners and Sorensen can give you 75 to 80% of what they showed against the Bears, that'll put the Niners in a good position to win. Only 4 missed tackles all game by San Francisco. And for whatever it's worth, 2 is by Fred Warner and 1 each by 2 other players. Can they keep the Rams under 100 yards or close to it? Like not like 105 or 110 is going to kill them. But if they can keep Williams in the running game under 100 yards, great sign. And can they control one of the receivers? Right? You can't have Nakua and Cup go nuts or go for over 80 yards each or 100 yards each on, 7 or 8, 10 catches. You can't do that. This isn't like the NBA where you could have maybe Jordan go nuts and control everybody else, or pick your star player in the modern day NBA, have that player go nuts and control everybody else. That's not going to work. Because they have other weapons. McVay is a very innovative mind. He can get Demarcus Robinson involved if he's healthy. He got Tutu Atwell immensely involved the first time around because Nakua and Kupp were involved. But, you want to keep both receivers under 100 yards ideally. And the Niners have corners to match up between Demo and Ward and Green. They match up well with the Rams wide receivers. Here's going to be the major problem. Shanahan and Chris Shula, defensive coordinator for the Rams, that's a mismatch in the Niners' favor. Just look at the numbers. What the Niners are doing offensively, they're still like a top 7 offense, top 5 passing, top 7 rushing, or top 10 rushing. I don't know the exact stats. That's a mismatch considering the Rams are mid to low 20s. They're a bottom 4th, bottom 5th defense in the league. Actually worse than that, 28th against the rush, 24th against the pass. That's a mismatch in the Niners' favor. But the problem is I think the McVay Sorensen mismatch is bigger. It's a bigger mismatch there than Shanahan against Shula. I don't care what the stats say. Because the Rams offense is 15th overall, doesn't run it all that well. Scoring, in the low 20s, middling again. 23 is enough to win a game, right? But I just feel like when you take the stats away of the Rams offense numerically, and you take the stats away of the Niners defense numerically, and it becomes McVay versus Sorensen, I still think that's a bigger gap, a bigger chasm, talent-wise and play-calling-wise, than Shanahan and Shula. What is this ultimately going to mean for me? Now, both teams need this game. The Niners need it more, obviously, because they're a game behind the Rams, who are a game behind the Seahawks. The Niners need this more. But to say that this isn't a must-win game for both teams, I think would be unfair. I think the Niners are more desperate, for sure. They are, this isn't a long flight from Los Angeles to San Francisco. They're not coming cross-country, obviously. It is a short week. The Niners have big name players or key players that probably aren't going to play. Hopefully Bosa plays, hopefully Williams plays, hopefully Greenlaw plays, hopefully Guerendo plays. And not sadly, but crazy thought, Guerendo might be the most important of the 4 to give the Niners a balanced attack on offense, because the drop off from Bosa to Floyd or Yetur Gross-Matos or to Sam O is a big one, right? But boy, the drop off from Guerendo, and we've only seen him in one start and in spot duty, Guerendo to Patrick Taylor, that worries me, because Patrick Taylor, I don't know what he does well. I guess maybe he's a power back and maybe hold on to the football, but no wiggle, not even close to top end speed. And you would like to, the flip side of that coin as well, Shanahan has taken literally running backs off the street, off the scrap heap, Kyle and Mike, and has found productivity with them. So oh, okay. And maybe this is a 2 or 3-headed attack between Taylor and Deebo and Vaughn to get you those 30 carries and over 120 yards, hopefully. But Bosa with the hip and the oblique, Williams with the ankle, didn't practice or was limited on Tuesday. And I'm not sure how it looks on Wednesday since I'm recording this before. It's just a walkthrough. So, I mean, I'm sure they're going to be a limited participant in a walkthrough practice. How they're going to be able to play. Dre Greenlaw to me is the interesting one, right? They didn't want to play him last week against the Bears because it would have been a very quick turnaround for him coming off of the Achilles injury. There's the chance that he plays this week. And I think what he could mean to the team, what he could mean to the defense emotionally would be huge, right? And he's not going to play a full game. He may not even play, say there's 65 defensive snaps. He might not play 20 or 25. But him being out there on the field with his running mate, Fred Warner, the energy he brings, the aggressiveness, I think will be such a boost for a defense and a team that have just taken shots emotionally all season. Pearsall shooting, McCaffrey's injury, Charvarius Ward and his daughter, Trent Williams and one of his twins, tragically passing away a couple weeks ago. Offensive line coach Chris Forrester was just learned last week that his wife passed away from cancer the week leading up to the Super Bowl. And then obviously the Ayuk knee injury, Bosa missing time. I mean, there's been Mason now done for the year. There's been so many hits physically and emotionally to this team that it's got to suck the I don't say the life out of them, but affect the play on the field. Not that, they're locked in. To think that players on any sport aren't thinking about the next play, the next pass, the next reception, the next blocking rep, or in baseball, basketball, the next pitch, the next shot, whatever. You're locked in. I don't believe in distractions all that much. And if you're distracted, obviously Charvarius Ward was for those several weeks that he missed games, dealing with the tragic loss of his daughter. You're not going to come back till you can focus, right? Or coming off of an injury, you're not going to come back until you're healed and you can play. Putting Dre Greenlaw out there, they wouldn't put him out there if he wasn't at least 85, 90% healthy. He's not going to be 100% until he gets past the 1 year mark. But, and let's go back. Devondre Campbell has not been a liability the last month plus. He's found his footing. He's settled into the defense starting at the midway point of the season. So he's not the liability anymore that you're hoping or you're praying or saying, no matter what, you got to get Devondre Campbell out and put Dre Greenlaw in. Dre Greenlaw at 50% is better than Devondre Campbell at 100%. That we're not saying that at all. Or a D Winters or Jalen Graham got some playing time. Jalen Graham's back to the practice squad. He's been elevated 3 times. They're either the next time they have to bring him to the 53-man roster or release him from the practice squad. And I think they maybe can release him for a week and bring him back, and that resets his 3 elevations. I believe, again, don't quote me on that. But just getting back to Dre, just the emotional boost he would provide for the handful or limited number of snaps he would be on the field. And make no mistake, he's not playing the whole game, although Shanahan has no mercy when it comes to at least someone like Deebo coming off of pneumonia, first play back. I'm going to hand it off to you. Coming off of pneumonia. McCaffrey coming off of the Achilles tendonitis, bilateral, both legs. No mercy. You're going to play 90% of the snaps. Maybe it's a different thing with Dre being defense. It was an actual surgery and a recovery. But again, the emotional response he could provide. I mean, he's been on the sideline with the team. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to be on the sideline in his uniform versus on the sideline in street clothes. But just those snaps that he's out there, man, I think you're going to feel a different energy. And chances are he's probably going to get a personal foul because he hasn't been on the field for a while. And I'm sure he's due a couple personal fouls to get back to your Dre Greenlaw average of playing on the borderline of out of control and getting that, late hit or, crazy Dre Greenlaw thing that he's done in the past. Now, all that being said, I can see this game going either way. I want to believe that at least for another week, the Niners are going to give us hope that maybe they can go on a little bit of a run. Make us believe beating the Bears, make us believe getting a win on Thursday, keeping the pressure on Seattle, who's at home for Green Bay. Arizona, I think, has New England and the Panthers, I think, in Arizona the next 2 weeks. So you want to keep the pressure on other teams that they have to keep winning, but worry about your business first, because they have the Dolphins next week, which again is a very winnable game, struggled against the Jets last week into overtime, before you have the heavy hitter Lions coming in on Monday night, the week after that. So I want to believe, I'm going to be pulling the slogan from the X-Files, Mulder and Scully, that 90s show that I was a big fan of. And they tried to bring it back, through movies or once, if not twice, more recently. But I want to believe, so I'm going to say Niners 23, Rams 20. And this is a game that the Niners maybe, I don't want to say run away with, but they might be able to win this game by more than one score. 2-point spread, at least last I saw, so I have the Niners covering. But I want to believe, would I be shocked if the Rams won this game? Absolutely not. But the Niners, I think, headspace now, for what it's worth, because the headspace doesn't necessarily also always equate or relate to production on the field, but they are believing now that every game is a playoff game. So if it's a playoff game, every game is back against the wall. Every game is there is no tomorrow. I guess now that's a Rocky III quote, right? From Carl Weathers, from Apollo Creed. And if they're playing that way and they're playing with that urgency and leaving it out on the field, talent-wise, they're maybe with all these at full strength, they're a more talented team with the Rams. With all the injuries that they have, they're probably on par with the Rams. And hopefully this is like a 2011 game where, again, the Rams came into Santa Clara on a Monday night. The Niners were 3-5, and that win jump-started them to go on a run and get to the NFC Championship game, where they lost, ironically, at the Rams. Maybe the Rams are another one of those, not a cure-all, but a continue to get right game to help the Niners keep pace in the NFC West. San Francisco 23, Rams 20. From my lips to God's ears, we will see. Knock on wood. That concludes the podcast for today as we lead up to Thursday. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. There will be a podcast before Monday, a Rams-Niners reaction show, hopefully on Friday sometime. And it could be Friday night, possibly into Saturday, but I am aiming for Friday, especially if it's a Niner win. I'll be, it's a night game, so I'm not going to do like 11:30 midnight Eastern reaction show. I just don't have the energy to do that. But hopefully then sometime early-ish on Friday hopefully it's a victory Friday. We can revel in a victory, keeping the Niners slim playoff hopes alive. Between now and then, enjoy the game. Hopefully it goes the way that we want. Be happy, be healthy and safe, and we will talk soon, everybody. Take care.